All right, the U.S. House has just passed a measure compelling the Department of Justice to release all files related to the Jeffrey Epstein investigation by a remarkable 427 to 1 vote. Let's just go through the details of the vote first. And I want to talk about why I think this is important, why I think Republicans are being a little disingenuous, and then where we go from here. Okay, so the one who voted against the compelling the Justice Department to release the Epstein files was a guy named Clay Higgins, very conservative member from Louisiana. And Higgins basically said that he did not think that the protections in the bill did enough to protect whistleblowers. I'm just going to read a little bit of it. This is what he said, quote, "It abandons 250 years of criminal justice procedure in America. As written, this bill reveals and injures thousands of innocent people, witnesses, people who provided alibis, family members, etc. If enacted in its current form, this type of broad reveal of criminal investigative files released to a rabid media will absolutely result in innocent people being hurt." Not really sure the rabid media thing is fair, but okay, whatever. So he was the one vote against. 5 people, a couple in both parties, did not vote, probably because they weren't there. And there are 2 vacancies right now. So that you add all that up, you get to 435 votes. It is remarkable, and I think it's worth taking a minute to note, that a piece of legislation that had to be forced onto the House floor, and to be clear, this was forced onto the House floor by a discharge petition, 218 members of Congress signing it, and doing so despite the urgings of Speaker Mike Johnson not to do it and the urgings of Donald Trump not to do it, that it had to be forced onto the floor around the leadership using kind of like a procedural quirk, that it got 427 votes with 1 person opposing it sort of broadly on principle. The story Republicans are trying to tell now is, well, they were always for vote. They're for full transparency, but they weren't. I mean, like, I'm not trying to be partisan at all. It's just a fact. Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, was adamantly opposed to this discharge petition. He worked against people signing the discharge petition. He insisted that the House Oversight Committee was already doing everything that needed to be done, and there was no need for this. So he voted for it, even though he said he was against it, but he said he had always been for it. That doesn't make a ton of sense to me. Donald Trump, as recently as a week ago, was calling Nancy Mace of South Carolina and Lauren Boebert of Colorado, trying to get them to take their names off the discharge petition. They refused. The discharge petition went through. 427 people voted for it. And Donald Trump on Sunday night said he was for it and they should vote for it. This is solely Donald Trump trying to avoid a really, really kind of embarrassing loss. If he had stood his ground and said, I don't want these files released and any Republicans who are loyal to me won't vote for it, there were going to be a real rebellion. Now, would every Republican but one have voted to release these files? No way. No way. Trump gave them cover. So this idea that we've always been in favor of this bill, we would have voted for this no matter what. There's no way that's the case. You know, maybe 50, maybe 75, maybe even 100 Republicans would have broke ranks, but the majority of Republicans would have voted against this until Donald Trump said it was okay to vote for this. So the other thing that I want to kind of knock down, Mike Johnson, the Speaker, and a couple other Republicans said that this is nothing more than a political show vote. That was the word that they used, to which I would say, most votes that happen on the House and Senate floor are political show votes. It's one side or the other trying to put the other party, or at least members of the other party who represent competitive districts, in uncomfortable places and making uncomfortable votes. This, in fact, was not a political show vote because it was for Republicans and Democrats who forced this to vote. This was not a partisan thing, right? I mean, I know it was only 4 Republicans, but still, it was Republicans and Democrats. It wasn't just the Republican leadership putting something forward. It wasn't just the Democratic leadership putting something forward. Plus, there are tons of these show votes that happen all the time, and Republicans vote against them and Democrats vote against them, right? Like there are plenty of times when there's a show vote to try to make something uncomfortable and everyone on one side votes for it and everyone on the other side votes against it. So the idea that because it was a political show vote, I'm not sure why I'm showing you this other than I wrote political show vote on it. The idea that because it was a political show vote, they had to vote for it is BS. There's lots of political show votes that one side or the other doesn't vote for. They voted for it because they knew being on the wrong side of transparency as it relates to potential pedophilia is a real political loser. Now, where do we go from here? I think this is going to move fast. So Mike Johnson said that he voted for this, even though he opposed it, and he really thought that the Senate, led by John Thune and Republicans, needed to amend it to make sure that there were protections in place for people who are whistleblowers who wanted to remain anonymous. I think that's very unlikely to happen. Here's what John Thune said, Senate Majority Leader said right after the vote. Quote, when a bill comes out of the House 427-1 and the president said he's going to sign it, I'm not sure that amending it is in the cards. Yeah, that's exactly right. When you have an overwhelming, basically unanimous vote on something, the president says he's going to sign it, the Senate is not going to get in the way of that and start fiddling and tinkering with it. Because remember, if Republicans want anything at this point, they want this to get off the front pages and get off the lead of the news and as soon as possible. So my guess is by the end of Tuesday, November 18th, Republicans in the Senate will lead the charge to pass this either by unanimous consent in the Senate, which just means that they say we pass this by unanimous consent. If any senator objects, you can't do it. But if they all agree, it just goes to the president. They don't even have to put their name on a vote, or they have a vote. Either way, I think this is very likely to happen in the extreme near future. Trump could even have this bill on his desk by late Tuesday night, could sign it by late Tuesday night, certainly could sign it by Wednesday. So this is all going to be over in a less than 24-hour period, which, again, take a step back. The fact that a discharge petition that was held up because Mike Johnson refused to seat a member of Congress who won her district, Adelita Grijalva, 50 days before she was seated because she would be the 218th signature on a discharge petition. The fact that in the most unlikely vehicle possible, a discharge petition, turned into a 427-1 vote in the House, is likely to either be a voice unanimous consent vote or a unanimous or close to unanimous vote in the Senate, and then be signed by the President of the United States all within a 24-hour period, speaks to the absolutely how incredible this storyline is. I have covered Congress and politics for a really long time. I am stunned it has gone the way it has gone. I did not know that it would pass the House. I figured it would pass the House. Barely, until Donald Trump got for it. But the fact that it's going to become law, Donald Trump is going to sign into law something that a week ago he said should not happen, was not necessary, and he was calling Republican members to try to block. I mean, that's remarkable. Now, the broader what's next is how much of this all comes out. How much of what is in the Epstein report fully comes out. And you know what? Harder to know than we can say right now. I do think that Marjorie Taylor Greene, who has broken with one of Donald Trump's most loyal allies, broken with Donald Trump on this particularly and a few other things, she was at a press conference with some of the victims of Epstein before the vote on Tuesday, and she said this, quote, the real test will be, will the Department of Justice release the files or will it all remain tied up in investigations? And she's exactly right. Donald Trump has called for investigations into any by the DOJ into any Democrat who was mentioned in the Epstein emails. I think that could give them broad jurisdiction to say, well, we can't release anything that pertains to an ongoing investigation and really allow them to withhold a ton of stuff. They also could redact names, information, and that would be a long legal fight over whether they properly redacted stuff or not. So that question of what are we ever going to get all of the Epstein files is harder to answer, and I'm skeptical of. But take a minute to think about and reflect on how remarkable it is that we got to a point where this compelling of the Department of Justice to release the Epstein files is going to pass with one vote against it in the House, probably unanimously in the Senate, and be signed by Donald Trump within a 24 to 36 hour period, even though a week ago, basically every Republican but 4 in the House and Donald Trump were opposed to it and actively working to keep this from happening. I mean, it is remarkable. And for people who say democracy doesn't work, I would point you to this and say, actually, this is an example where it does. Thanks for listening. As always, I hope you subscribe. I'm independent from big media. I'm independent from the two political parties, and I am authentic. I'm always going to tell you my honest opinion. I'm never going to tell you what you want to hear so that you'll subscribe. I'm not in the fan service business. You will agree with me sometimes. You will disagree with me sometimes. That's a good thing in my mind. I hope you also like and comment on this video. It helps me build my community on YouTube. And last thing you can do, be an evangelist for me. Tell people about what I'm building here and why you think it matters and why they should follow as well. Okay, take care.